In our Friday Global Corporate Law webinars, we have started discussing about the provisions related to Singapore Companies Act, in which from last webinar, we have been discussing about the provisions relating to arrangement, reconstruction and amalgamation under Singapore Companies Act. Friends, in part 1, we studied and discussed about the provisions relating to compromise and arrangement, more particularly relating to power regarding compromise arrangement, information as to compromise arrangement which has to be shared with the parties concerned, which could be your members, creditors, or holders of units of shares. And then, after sufficient information is being provided, the power of the court for approving such compromise or arrangement will be given effect to. And what if there are any dissenting shareholders? How they will be treated in such transaction was discussed thereat. We also discussed about the provision of joint offers. Friends, today in part 2 we are going to discuss more particularly relating to amalgamation, how the amalgamation proposal has to be placed and how the matters of amalgamation will be discussed, the procedural aspects starting from the board till the court approval which is being granted thereto, and how the effect will be given effect to the moment this particular effective date of the scheme is announced to the registrar. And the effect of this amalgamation between amalgamating company and amalgamated company we will discuss. And we will also try to understand the short form of amalgamation which is possible in the case of relationship between holding and subsidiary company, or in the case of WOS, wholly owned subsidiary companies. And we will also understand the effects of this amalgamation dispensing this particular approval or order of the court, what are the more particularly with regard to short form of amalgamation. So with this brief introduction, let's get into today's presentation. Thanks to Aishwarya for this presentation. We are also going to see the legends for our reference. The outline, we will see the amalgamation, the effects, amalgamation proposal, how the procedural and formalities, statutory formalities have to be adopted and complied with. Then the solvency statement, which has to be submitted both by the amalgamating company and amalgamated company. And the transfer of this payment with regard to such amalgamation to official receiver, what is the minimum and maximum timeline prescribed thereto. And finally, we will also see in the case of oppression, what are the remedies sufficiently available to the parties who are oppressed, or in the case of injustice. Section 215A gives the meaning of amalgamation. Amalgamation could be between two or more companies in Singapore, but subject to the approval of court under 212 of the Act, and any other law which is relating to merger amalgamation. Like if there is going to be any foreign exchange compliance, then you have to go to MAS, Monetary Authority of Singapore. And you also need to have the respective relevant ministries approval, the regulators approval, if the company is industry specific, sectoral specific. So any other law which is affecting this particular amalgamation also has to be looked at along with the Singapore Companies Act. 215B talks about the contents of amalgamation proposal, in which the terms, the salient features, the rationale of amalgamation has to be discussed. And the proposal has to provide in detail the terms of this amalgamation, the name of the amalgamated company, either one of the amalgamating company's name or the new name, which could be your existing company, or the resulting company could be a new company which is proposed to be formed. The address of registered office, the details of the directors, the constitution of amalgamated company, like the memorandum and articles of association, and how exactly this particular company is constituted, public company, listed company, private company. So the category of this amalgamated company together with this chartered document, and how the shares are going to be converted to the amalgamated company in consideration of this particular amalgamation. And where there is no conversion, the consideration has to be paid to the holders of the shares. And if shares of one of the amalgamating companies are held by or on behalf of another amalgamating company, the manner of cancellation of those shares without consideration upon giving effect to this amalgamation shall be provided in the contents of the amalgamation proposal, and it need not, in which this particular last piece, it need not provide the conversion details. And cancellation of shares shall certainly not be deemed to be reduction of share capital, because reduction of share capital has to be dealt with separately by virtue of a specific section. 215C talks about the manner in which this proposal has to be approved. First, the board has to recommend this particular proposal of amalgamation subject to the approval of court and subject to the approval of members. Then comes the members' approval. The secured creditors, if there are any, shall also approve, because their interest is certainly going to be affected because by virtue of this particular transfer. Publication in one English newspaper there in Singapore, and board shall call for a general meeting by giving a sufficient gap of 21 days notice, and there shall be a solvency statement both for amalgamating and amalgamated company, and every director who is going to vote in favor of the resolution shall make a statement and give a declaration that all the conditions necessary for complying with this amalgamation are satisfied, and members shall also pass a special resolution for approving this proposal. There is also the short form of amalgamation. You can adopt this route provided there is this relationship between holding and subsidiary company or between two or more wholly owned subsidiaries. So in this case, passing of special resolution will suffice the requirement, and it shall be agreed that the shares will be cancelled without payment of consideration. Again, here cancellation shall not lead to reduction of share capital if the amalgamating companies continue as amalgamated holding companies. So the amalgamating subsidiary companies should get amalgamated, and the resulting company should continue in the form of the holding company, in which case the shares will be cancelled without consideration payment. And shareholders shall be allotted the same number of shares in the amalgamated entity without any consideration because of the nexus that these two companies have. The companies continue as provided, they continue as an amalgamated subsidiary company, and the balance shares will be cancelled there too. And in the case of the second scenario where there are transaction or transfer between two or more wholly owned subsidiary companies, again by passing special resolution in a general meeting, and the agreement in the resolution shall be the shares of all but one of the amalgamating company will be cancelled without consideration, and constitution of the amalgamated company will be the same as the constitution of the amalgamating company whose shares are not cancelled, and in which case the procedure shall be written notice shall be given to secured creditors as well, similar to your 215C proposal, and the gap shall be not less than 21 days before the date of meeting, and similar to your 215C, solvency statement shall be provided and it shall be laid before the general meeting. And again, this particular self-declaration by the directors that all the statutory conditions have been complied with shall also be given, similar to your 215C under 215D. The next provision we are going to see with regard to the effect of this particular amalgamation being given there too. All the proposals together with the documents which shall be mandatorily submitted to the registrar shall be provided along with the prescribed fee. And on receipt of documents, the registrar shall issue a notice of amalgamation. In the case of existing company, because the resulting company is already formed, if it is going to be a new company, then notice of incorporation will be issued by the registrar. If the amalgamation proposal specifies any date as effective date, the scheme clearly says that the appointed date is this, the effective date is this, then the notice of the registrar shall also incorporate this date. Upon receiving the application, the registrar shall issue a certificate of confirmation of this particular amalgamation. connection seem to be unstable and hence yeah. Effect of amalgamation. We all know that the transferor companies, all the properties will go to the transferee company, the liabilities will be vested with the transferee company. With regard to the pending proceedings and the conviction order, everything will be moved from the amalgamating company to the amalgamated company, and the shares and the rights of the members shall also be converted into the shares and rights provided for in the amalgamated company. So the effect will be effective the date of amalgamation. As mentioned earlier, it shall be the effective date from which all these transfers shall be given effect to. 215H deals with the order of the court. If the court is satisfied that giving this particular effect to the amalgamation proposal would certainly affect the rights of either the creditors or members or any other person who is related or party to this amalgamating company, the court may, after receiving this application, but this particular application shall be received before this particular amalgamation is being given effect to, in which case the court can certainly order for this particular amalgamation proposal not to be given effect to, or it could provide for any variation in the terms of the amalgamation proposal, or it could also provide for reconsidering this whole amalgamation proposal or part thereof. We are now going to see the second part of today's session, being the solvency statement, where we have two categories for amalgamating company and amalgamated company. Almost the provisions are same, because the board has to first confirm and give in an affirmative manner that the company's liabilities could be well disposed of and they will not be in a position to render themselves unable to pay their debts, which is very important to declare the solvency. And ideally, the assets value shall be greater than the liabilities value, which also would include your contingent liabilities. And in the case of small or dormant companies which are exempt from audit requirements, the statement could be in the form of a declaration accompanied by the auditor's report stating that they have inquired into the affairs of the company and there exists no reason for this particular statement, solvency statement, to be declared as untrue. And if there is going to be any default in complying with this provision, there is a huge penalty with a fine of 1 lakh Singapore dollars and also imprisonment of up to 3 years or both. The same similar provision, not exactly the same provision, in 215J, in the case of solvency for amalgamated company, there you have this particular confirmation from board for the purpose of declaring the solvency and also the asset value being greater than the liability value. But only difference between 215I and J would be, in this particular case, you don't have that auditor's backing statement confirming that the solvency statement declaration as provided is considered to be proper. Particular affirmative statement is not applicable in the case of small government company. Not in this case. Now, we're going to talk So if amalgamation is approved under 215C, which is your normal channel of going through the court, or the short form amalgamation under 215D, it attributes for such consideration being transferred, that particular amount shall be held in trust, and the already we discussed about this particular amount to be after the expiration of 2 years, but before the expiration of 10 years from the date of receipt. And he shall deal with this money as per section 197 of your Insolvency Restructuring Act. And section 197 clearly says that all the unclaimed assets which are there pending shall be treated as unclaimed assets and which shall lie in the hands of official receiver. We're going to conclude this session with the final part being personal remedies which are available in case of oppression or injustice. So what if there is an oppression or there is an injustice caused to any stakeholder? It could be a member, debenture holder, or in the case of a declared company under Part 9, which is relating to investigation by the court. Who are the parties who have the right to make an application to the court? And member will also include the members who have been transmitted shares by operation of law. And if affairs are being conducted in a manner which is oppressive or which it is being conducted in an injustice manner, then this particular discrimination is clearly evident and exists, then section 216 provides the route available for all these stakeholders concerned. On such application being made by these stakeholders, when the court is satisfied, it may issue any of the following orders for remedying this particular oppression or injustice which is caused to them. Direct or prohibit, or they could also allow for cancellation or modification of the transaction or the resolution. So if there is going to be any amalgamation proposal which is leading to this oppressive act or in an unjustifiable manner, then either they could annul the transaction or they could ask for suitable modification to the resolution made. And they could order for regulating the conduct of the affairs of the company and authorize for civil proceedings to be brought in the name, by, or on behalf of the company, provide for the purchase of shares, debentures by other members or debenture holders, and in case of purchase of shares, provide for a reduction accordingly of the company's share capital, and where in the case of winding up the provisions of this act, which is your Insolvency Act, the same shall squarely apply for this particular winding up order which is passed by the court. And when the court provides this particular order giving such declaration, then it shall be lodged with the registrar within 14 days after the court makes the order, and where there is a default, the penalty will be fine up to a sum of 1,000 Singapore dollars, and it could also lead to a default penalty. Derivative and representative actions. 216A deals with the same, and where the complainant again could be a member, or in the case of Part 9 investigation, it could be the minister or any other person who is deemed fit by the court as a proper person to action the name and on or behalf of the company, and to intervene in any act arbitration the company is a party for defending or will be satisfied on any of the grounds if the complaint has given 14 days in advance a notice to the board of directors of the company expressing the facts and his intention to make an application to the court. If they do not bring diligently this particular matter before the court, then he is exercising his particular prerogative right to approach the court. The complainant is acting in good faith, uberima fide, and it appears that to the court that it is in the best interest of the company. The court on an application feels that it is not proper to give this notice to the board of directors, because previously we saw that the notice shall be given to the board of directors and there shall be a time gap of 14 days before he approaches the court. And where it is deemed fit, then the court may also grant exception for this particular approach to the directors, and it may grant interim order as it deems fit, pending the complainant giving this notice as may be required. And order could be a final or interim order granting a leave by the court, where it authorizes either the complainant or any other person to control the conduct of this particular action on behalf of the company, or an order giving direction for the conduct of action or arbitration by the person who is so empowered, and an order to pay, reimburse such other attorney fees which may be incurred by this particular complainant while making this particular action. 216B deals with evidence of shareholders' approval which is not decisive, and court approval to discontinue the action which is emerging under section 216A. Application made or an action brought or intervened under section 216A shall not be stayed or dismissed just because that an alleged breach of right or duty owed to the company has been or may be approved by the members. But the evidence of approval which is already granted by the members could be taken into consideration, but that particular application shall not be stayed just because there is an approval granted by the members. And it shall not be an application which is made under section 216A shall not be stayed or discontinued for want of prosecution without the approval of court. So without the grant of court's permission, this particular prosecution shall not be stayed for the purpose of initiating any prosecution. And if the court determines that the interest of any complainant could be affected by virtue of this particular dismissal or staying of this particular order, the court may order any party to the application to give notice to the complainant. And an application could be made or action could be brought or intervened under section 216A, where the court may at any time order the company to pay the complainant the attorney fees or any other legal cost which he would be incurring thereto. But the complainant may be accountable for such interim cost upon final disposal of the application. Friends, with this we are concluding part 2 relating to this amalgamation compromise arrangement as enshrined in Singapore Companies Act. We will be continuing with the Singapore Companies Act provision in our next Singapore Act session as well. Thank you very much. Take care. Stay safe.